how to talk about this one. Convenience. Convenience is the enemy. This applies quite a lot to stuff that's going on right now in politics and in the world, especially after the lockdown, especially with the far left globalist policies that are being pushed upon us and the authoritarian governments. Trying to get rid of physical cash is the main one. They're trying to cut us off from physical cash and put everyone on forms of so-called cash that are completely controlled by government, that they themselves can ration, that they themselves can... Essentially, it's not your money. They can say when you can buy something, they can say what you buy, they can say how much you use, they can say how much you have. And they're already stealing our money from us in the form of tax. All these things like welfare and benefits, it's theft of public money from taxation and things. So a lot of the government, through the World Economic Forum and the United Nations and people like this, big globalist organizations that puppeteer governments, are trying to get people on things like CDBCs, or is it CBDCs? Central Bank Digital Currencies, which is what I was outlining just there, just a very controllable... it's kind of like digital currency, but one the government controls. It's not like, you know, your Bitcoin, and I think I can hear a cat. Alfie's just come in. Yeah, the government want... hold on a sec, boy, have you got... Is that a tick? Distractions video is still ongoing, it seems. Come here, boy. What have you got on you? Have you got anything on you there? Oh, you do. Tick. Always gotta watch him for these ticks. What a distraction, boy. Ow, you clawing my leg like mad. Ow! Jesus. Alright, I got a tick off Alfie. Oh yeah. The evil of convenience. Another one that people are already using, the big one, is contactless. Of course, there are all these other sorts of things. There are like Apple Pay and Google Wallet. You should never use these things. Alfie, you're going to flip the camera or something. Careful, boy. You should never use these things. You should use cryptocurrency, digital currency like Bitcoin and stuff, because it's decentralized. It's harder for the government to get at. It's your own form of... It's a form of currency that the government can't really regulate as easy as it can everything else. I think other people have been saying like getting silver and gold, these sorts of things. But basically, you're only doing... like we don't have real capitalism. We've never really had real capitalism. I can hear the socialists all reeing off in the distance there in the background. Capitalism would require a void where the state is. It would require no government intervention in free trade. No regulation, like no saying you can't buy this or you can't buy that, or you can only buy this conditionally under certain circumstances, or there's an age gate on this, or there's like we're putting tax up on this because it's a luxury item, or like VAT, or you're not allowed to sell these types of products in this type of place to these types of people. All of this like nonsense. It's like interventionism by the government into trade, which makes the trade mixed economy in quite an ugly way, like mixing capitalism with socialism, with the socialism being predominant, because you've got control in trade. You know, you can't simply say you've got a product to a person, that person notices you've got a product, they've got a service, they'll trade the service for your product. There's no middleman in between. There's no government registering the fact that you're doing that, like doing a sale. Like when you start a business, you kind of have to like take stock of everything you have and register it and tell the tax man, essentially telling the government what you've got so that they can steal from you, take tax from you. Like if you were living in pure capitalism, like Ancapistan, there would be no government to regulate anything you're trading. Basically, you can have capitalism in small pockets right now, but it has to be done in secret. It has to be done where the government doesn't even know that it's happening, essentially. Back to convenience, though, because we talked about distraction, and I'm getting distracted. The convenience of payment is what allows the government to control ever deeper and deeper and deeper, and get more and more authoritarian, control your transactions, stop you from buying food, essentially, is one of the things that it amounts to. Stop the farmers from getting their food to you. Stop the farmers from producing food for the people, getting it to the people, getting money from the people for the food, trading the food, to the people who need it, so that there's just a constant flow and also competition between different brands of food. So this brand of rice manufacturer fucks up their product. Somehow glass sneaks into their packaging because they're terrible at what they do. Then the other rice manufacturer who doesn't do that, all the customers go over to him. He gets the money. This business here that gets glass in their food product fails, goes under. That's how it should be. Constant flow towards people who can produce the best service, give you the food that you're looking for, give you the product or service you're looking for, and do it better, and they get reviewed and they compete with each other. Like, this is what should happen. Capitalism can't exist like that, like I've just described, in the present world, except in black markets, which are free markets, which are unregulated markets, which is simply trading with someone under the government's, out of the government's view. So it can't intervene with the transaction. It can't regulate it. So if I go to my neighbour, I've built a fence, I can build you a fence. And they're like, alright, I've got chili peppers. You like chili peppers? Would you like to buy some chili peppers? Yeah, can I buy the chili peppers by building you the fence that you want? And they're like, yeah. And then, I build them the fence they want. They give me the chili peppers as payment, or money, whatever. But the government doesn't know any of that happens, so it can't tax the transaction. It can't get involved. It can't control you. It can't stop someone. It can't impose things like safety, and safety's a big way. Might do a video on that. Fucking safety. Enemy of freedom, antithetical to freedom. Safety is a way in which, the government can say, oh, you can't have a fence over a certain height. That's restricted. There's a law. We've put a law in now. There's a law against it. Or you have to pay me a fee to have your fence at that height, and we send an inspector around to check, and then you pay government. Or you pay the inspector his fee or whatever, which goes to the government. So we allow you to have a fence of this height, but only if you go through our little circus kind of jump through hoops thing. Yeah, so convenience. The ease of something like contactless, where you just go up to a machine and this payment method, you don't have to go fumbling through your wallet, which takes a little bit of time, but it's not that high effort or anything. But people think, oh, I'm lazy. I'd just get my card out and go beep, and then £80 is just whisked from my bank account instantly to this random person, and I leave. Oh, sure, you've got that convenience of just flashing the card. Takes slightly longer than using your physical cash to pay for the transaction. But contactless and Google Pay and Apple Wallet and all these things there. Or is it Apple Pay and Google Wallet? I don't know. They're terrible. I wouldn't touch it with a barge pole. They're extremely controlled, especially if you know about Google and you know about Apple and you know their track record and what they do. Never mind that, contactless comes from the banks and the government. These are extremely controlled. They're ways that the government can deny you access to your own money. Why would you go through the convenience, the ease of doing something in life, if something's made so-called convenient for you by someone who's controlling you? That's what a lot of convenience boils down to. I'm trying to think of other examples. I'm not going to be able to think of any other examples, I don't think, today for this video, but I might, there might be another convenience is evil kind of video some point in time, possibly. One thing about it is it's like the so-called progressivism that isn't really progressive, it's regressive, but the idea is that something new comes out, and sometimes it's mechanized, sometimes it's digital. It makes it easier to do the job that you did in the past, so you need less effort. Like the printing press, I suppose, for books. You used to have to write books, I think, and then the printing press in medieval times around Henry VIII's era allowed you to... It's like a very early typewriter. And then eventually there was the typewriter, so you could make books on the typewriter. That was more convenient than the printing press. There was probably some iteration between those two that I don't know about in the Industrial Revolution. And then you get the computer, of course, and you can now use MS Word to type up your book on the computer and print it out that way. But you're getting away from the sort of the health, I guess, of the effort needed to do something. And there is huge value in handmade stuff, in working on something that takes effort, that takes time to achieve, achieving stuff with the difficulty. There's a line in Jurassic Park, like Ian Malcolm is in that debate, that very cool debate scene in Jurassic Park, where they're in the black room with the lights and everything, and everyone's like having the moral, ethical debate about dinosaurs and whether we should resurrect them. And Malcolm's like, the problem with this is it took no difficulty to attain. It took no effort to attain. You read what others had done and then you took the next step. You didn't figure it out for yourself. You didn't go through the experience yourself. You just took the convenient route. See, that's a convenience thing, that scene there. You saw what other people had done and you just mimicked it rather than going through it yourself. There's something there, there's an example there that I can't quite bring to the surface with convenience, where there'll be a skill and you'll be able to do it when it took so much effort in the past to do, but because of technology and what they've brought out that makes it easier, like I use a paint program to do colour paintings. I don't actually do any... I've done a little bit of colour painting with acrylics and stuff on a board for a sign, actually. But yeah, I am aware that it is a lot easier and too convenient for me using like Corel Painter, this fake technology program that actually allows you to produce these wonderful colour paintings in the way that a painter in the 1950s wouldn't have been able to even do. He'd just have to actually work with physical wet stuff on a brush. Like, was it the purple paint came from a beetle or something, and everything was coloured dyes, and you got yellow is like turmeric or something, and it paints on the page, and there's no undo button for a stroke. So if you get it wrong, you have to figure a way around that, like wait for it to dry and paint over it, or you can use water to blur it into a different colour. You can't undo your strokes, whereas in this paint program, you've got the modern convenience of doing this thing that the 1950s painters could not do. It's a good thing I didn't say like 1930s or 1940s painters, because people would be, all the SJWs would be like, what's he talking about, Austrians? A certain Austrian. Yeah, it's just I am aware myself, even though I do use that convenience, that I am not as skilled and that I am not as connected with the page. Although I do physical drawings with pens and pencils, I don't do physical colour. I do colour on the computer. I'm aware that I'm less skilled than someone who can do colour on a page and can manage the difficulties that don't come with the convenience of the undo button, that you can manage, like can engage their brain more and has more skill in knowing when to put a stroke down, how to put a stroke down so they know that stroke's right and that they won't have to undo it, or knowing how to undo it in a physical way, the hard way, like you go away from your canvas for 3 hours and it's dry and then you go on top of it. Like, it's not as speedy is another thing with convenience. If you've got a modern convenience allowed to you by a new technology that allows you to do something, it generally does it faster. In the business I worked at, we took telephone orders sometimes from one company, and then from another company we had web orders. The web orders would generally go faster. Depends on the company. But when I was doing the telephone orders, I was like, oh wow, this is really old-fashioned. This must have been how everyone did it, how everyone ordered food for their shop. I'm using the 50s again, back in that kind of era, the 20th century era. Like, you would have to have someone call up a company, have a list of food, and go 500 grams of raisins, 12 kilos of muesli, 150 gram pineapple. Just go through, and the other person on the other end writes it on their list to take the order down, and then they go off to the picking in the factory to get all the things and send it down to the guy. Whereas on the website, you're just clicking like plus, or you're typing code, quantity, enter. And in some instances, although it doesn't work in practice, that was a lot faster. But again, it lacks the human touch, and it lacks the effort of like using your voice to talk to the other person on the other end of the phone. Wait for them if there's a distraction. They wait for you if you've got a distraction, like a customer comes in while you're trying to do the telephone order. You've got to stop and come back to them. There is more of a real human connection there. Like, you hear a person's voice and their mannerisms and their cadence and their rhythms, and they hear yours, and there's like actual like connection there. Yeah, you're feeling something. I suppose it's like the difference between, it's like if you're riding a bicycle and then they release the electric bicycle, or the super suspension bicycle where you don't feel the road, or you're riding an old style car compared to a new style car, and the new style cars are all smooth and glidey and the doors open smoothly, but the old style cars are like bumpier, and you have to maintain them more, and you have to put in effort to what you're doing. And it's that difference, I think, between like physical effort and connection and taking time to put in effort to do something, but you're having way more connection to that thing, versus someone's brought out a new technology to make that thing. Someone didn't like something about that thing for a while, so they brought one of those people working in that connected physical reality, brought out this technology that bypasses it and supposedly makes it easier and faster. But the thing they miss is that you can be more controlled. You can lose the human element. I nearly said elephant. The human element. And sometimes it goes faster, but there is value to slowing down. You're not actually experienced in what you're doing. You're not as hardworking. There's a laziness there. There's an ease. The ease at which you give something away, like give part of yourself away as well. Whereas over here, when you're not doing things conveniently, you're doing things with the effort it takes to do every part of them without any shortcuts or anything. You are more keeping part of yourself and not giving part of yourself away. You're not giving part of yourself away to some middleman who does the technology to make it easier for you. You know, you're doing it all yourself, sort of thing. So there's more to be said on convenience. More examples, I think, is probably the main thing. Yeah, I've come to start thinking convenience is the enemy, and you shouldn't necessarily take the easy route, doing things the fast way, I guess.